that video idea came to me in the shower because, that's where all great ideas come from.
All right, so nice to meet you, Real Life Ryan. My name is Tranquil Dionysian, if you guys didn't know already.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys don't know, although I'm sure most of you do, we're Berserk YouTubers. Both of us have made several videos on the topic. I made a Berserk timeline. You've made the Berserk Monster Manual, which I've gone to several times, just kind of refresh my memory. So yeah, it's awesome to do a video together like this.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man. What's funny is sometimes I have to go back and rewatch my own videos to remember stuff sometimes. There's so much information in Berserk, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I watched your recent Griffith Did Nothing Wrong video as well. I was like, I gotta watch his most recent ones. I gotta see what's going on. So hell yeah.
Yeah, just for clarification purposes, the like to dislike ratio was just absolutely awful. I know YouTube changed their guidelines where you can't see the number of dislikes, but maybe for good reason. But I think I should probably change the title of that video to Griffith is not an evil person. He's done evil things, but not an evil person, possibly. Because, when you look at the entire Berserk lore, Guts has done some pretty horrible things himself. I mean, I know you made that video of why did Guts clap demon cheeks?
Listen,
and that was probably one of his lowlights, where it's is he cheating on Casca? He didn't put a ring on her finger, but
I mean, let's be honest, fellas, we've all been there. But no, listen, that video, that video idea came to me in the shower because that's where all great ideas come from.
Absolutely.
And I didn't expect that video to blow up with it became my second highest viewed video of all time. Literally nothing else I upload will ever match it. And I guess just it was a good title to the video. I don't know what it was, but it just happened to be the most popular video. I didn't plan it. I was like, oh, I think that would be an interesting topic, just a one-off video, and then it just became something else. But you got to be known for something in this world, I suppose.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, I saw my YouTube feed that within what was it, 10 days, it was at 500,000 views, and I'm like, holy cow. I mean, I think it was just the simplicity of it. What you had a picture of Guts' ass, screwing the female apostle and Punk's face on it. I mean, it was perfect. It was poetry.
I just lightning in a bottle moment. It'll never happen again, but yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, this will be a relatively free-flowing conversation. I don't have a script. Ryan doesn't have a script. So we'll just kind of ask questions here and there. But I kind of wanted to start about this with Chapter 364, because I've been thinking about it a lot. And I actually just had a conversation with one of my friends about it. And we were kind of talking about whether or not it should be continued through Mira's assistance, or if it should just kind of stop right there and just kind of leave it as is. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts about it, and then I'll give some of my thoughts.
So the thing that I always said is that for me, obviously first and foremost, whatever Kentaro Miura wanted to do, that's what they should do. So if he had it written down somewhere, upon my passing, this is what you do with it. Absolutely, no question, no argument, just do that. But if you're asking me personally what I would want, I've always said that I feel like they should end Berserk with Volume 41, so you have the complete Kentaro Miura era of Berserk, and it's not tainted, and it's 41 volumes. There you go, there you have it. And if you were to continue it, I think you should do sort of a rebranding, basically, no pun intended, but do a Berserk, the final chapter, or the final act, or the final arc. So it's it's titled something a little bit separate, so that way you could put it right alongside Volume 41, finish out the series, but if you also wanted to believe that it doesn't exist and it's just fan fiction, you don't have to accept it as the actual ending. So I think that'd be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question. When I made my review video back in September, I initially said that I wouldn't want to see it continued. I felt like it was a quote-unquote perfect ending. You had the moment with Guts where he couldn't hold his Dragon Slayer anymore. And I kind of saw that symbolically as, well, he's kind of done fighting. He's on Elfhelm. He did what he wanted to do. He saved Casca's memory. she's back to normal-ish. I mean, she still can't
Yeah.
see or talk to Guts in a realistic fashion, but that was kind of the whole purpose of the story, was after the eclipse, he wanted to save Casca, and he kind of did that. And it's hard to see the story go on beyond what Mira worked on. But then I talked to a friend, and I kind of thought about it a little bit. I don't know if you've read, like, the Dune novels by Frank Herbert.
No.
Okay. So he wrote these novels, and he wrote 6 of the novels. He ended up passing away, but his son carried on his work, and I think his son's written actually like a dozen novels after his passing. And then I thought about George Lucas and Star Wars. He sold it to Disney, and they're kind of continuing his vision. And even Gween Saga, which Berserk is based off of, the female mangaka ended up passing away in like 2010, 2011, and they continued the story from her work as well. So I'm like, I mean, it's definitely been done before. Even Mozart's Requiem was finished after his death as well. So it's like, it's not unheard of. It's not out of this world, but it's so hard because I have such a deep love and attachment to Kentaro Miura that it's like, you know, it's not going to feel the same. Even if it's like 90% the same, it's like, it's still not Kentaro Miura.
Yeah, that's why I feel like if they did like a little bit of a rebranding, it would be kind of the best of both worlds, you know, because you could either accept it or not accept it, and whichever way that whatever you wanted to consider canon would be canon, basically, you know. So it would be a continuation or a finale to it, but it wouldn't be, you know, Berserk Volume 42. It would be like Berserk something else Volume 1, you know, 10 final volumes to end it. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of things in the story were definitely wrapping up. Like I think that you're right, like Guts is there's even that scene where he's on the hillside and he's just like, well, what do I do now? Like I kind of feel like I've achieved this, I'm not sure what to do, like, you know, and there's always that thorn in his side of Griffith, like, you know, is it still something that he feels like he needs to do? You know, deep down, I think yes, but maybe the story is, you know, leading to where he might be able to let fate or causality deal with it or something else. You know, I don't know, but yeah, it's bittersweet, man. It's bittersweet chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing I also had to consider as well is that when they arrived on Skellig Island, I believe it was Isma's mother was talking about the fact that time flows differently on there as well.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think even Shirka said, like, maybe like a few days pass, it could be like decades. And then we had that PCAF story, which was in the Conviction arc, where PCAF goes away in the woods, is playing with the fairies, and then he comes back and like all his family members and the whole town is gone. So could there be a possibility that they stay on?
Hang on one sec. Sorry, I had an uninvited guest.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, they're working on something outside my house. They just needed to ask something quick. But sorry. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just talking about how time flows differently. We had the PCAF story where PCAF goes off into the woods and decades go by, and he comes back and no one he remembers is there, and it's like, I always kept thinking about that, like, if Guts goes back to the real world to face Griffith in that sort of ultimate battle, does he come back and Falconia is just this different thing? Is Rickert like an old man, or is he a middle-aged man, you know?
That would be awesome. I always thought that as well, yeah, because they've set that up several times. They set it up with the PCAF story, they set it up when you met Flora, and I forget the dude's name. I think Morgan was his name or something, but he said he saw Flora when he was a kid, and she looks exactly the same, and now he's older, so he, you know, experienced that as well. And then, the final warning with Isma's mother. So I've always expected that to come into play at some point, and it would make, like, for some interesting storytelling if it happened while Griffith is on the island, because what happens to their kingdom without Griffith being there? You know, does it fall into disarray? Is that how, you know, you start to kind of corrupt, you know, mankind, that their leader is gone, they don't know what to do, and, like, you know, they maybe fall into darkness and, you know, lead up to Eclipse 2.0. Who knows? You know, so, I always expected something like that to happen. That's
kind of crazy because, I mean, we know eclipses happen every 216 years. What if enough time goes by on Skellig Island, they come back and it's time for another eclipse?
Yeah, and you know how
I mean, that would be weird to kind of get rid of all the characters that we've come to know and love, Rickert and Erica and Daiba. It's like to set up a whole new world where it's just Guts, Griffith, and the main crew. I don't know if Mira would go that far into it.
Yeah, that might be a little too far, but it's the concept, though, I really like. And you know how in the Conviction arc where everybody was like running towards the tower, as it was falling, and that sort of like big mass of darkness was swallowing everybody up and everything. I feel like that's sort of like a precursor to what could happen in Falconia. You have a bunch of people collected in one area. You have that kind of like swelling mass, like disarray amongst, the entire population. We've seen what kind of crazy rituals can happen when all that darkness is collected in one little small area. So I've always felt like there's going to be an eventual like Falconia now is a paradise, but given enough time, enough people to gather, enough kind of negative energy to swell up, who knows what could happen with it, Yeah,
and even Gedfring on Elfhelm was talking about that as well, where he was saying how the world spiral tree seems like it's parasitic, and it almost seems like there's a storm swirling around Falconia where it's the only safe place in the world. It's like the eye of the storm, but everything around it is just chaos and destruction. We see, these giants, roaming the lands and dragons and all sorts of weird things in the Age of Fantasia. So eventually I think it would have to come to a head. But yeah, it's just interesting because it's like, would that happen decades from now, years from now?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of ambiguous at this point.
Dude, that's the thing. Like, there's so much still that we don't know. It's so wild to think like there's so much plot details that have been kept in the background of what is happening through Berserk, which is in a way awesome because it allows us to speculate on everything, so we can like constantly come up with fan theories and stuff, which is a ton of fun. But at the same time, it's kind of crazy when you sit down and think of like how much we don't know about the process. I mean, we only just basically saw the history of Skull Knight, a few chapters ago.
A brief history.
That's crazy to me. Yeah, a very, very brief history. So that's crazy to me that it's able to do that. And I think that one thing is so impressive about it is because as amazing and immersive as the lore is, it pays so much attention to its characters. Like, characters are first and foremost and the most important. And I think that that's what separates Berserk from a lot of other stories, because I think a lot of people focus on plot, like what plot twist can I do this, like how deep can I make this, and sometimes they forget to focus on like the internal of the characters and everything they go through. And Guts, Farnese, Casca, they've all had such incredible character development throughout the whole story, and I think that that's what keeps that balance, because you have this rich, deep lore, but then you also have these characters that like go through so much and are so relatable, and that's like what makes it such a perfect series, is that blend.
Yeah, to actually give a brief shout out to one of my buddies, DJ Miles. He actually just posted a video about the Conviction arc, and in the video he was talking about the fact that he sort of didn't like the change, because when you compare it to, say, the Golden Age arc, everything is more down to earth and real, and then you start to get into the area of magic, and it kind of gets a little out there. And I was even reading an interview by Kentaro Miura where he was talking about this integration of magic, but he always keeps it down to earth in terms of the characters. Guts' struggles, even though he's getting this huge boost in power and energy with the Berserker armor, it's an internal struggle. And even Shirka notices that when she goes inside the Berserker armor and she notices his ego sort of fading away into the darkness, and she's sort of wondering to herself, how can I save him from a mental level and a psychological level? And even though there's all this magic going on and all these interesting powers and fights, it's still the human, it's still about the human condition, it's still about the characters. And Miura does a great way of using symbolism for showing how Guts' rage was sort of, he used it to his advantage early on. It was always it was always to his benefit. But, you know, in the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc with the Berserker armor, you sort of see how his rage, as symbolized by the armor, it's encasing his entire body. It's becoming this rigid restraint that's inhibiting him in some ways, and sort of making life harder for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when they started the concept of the Beast of Darkness and everything like that, I think I thought that was beautifully well done, because it really, it personifies what that traumatic experience can do to a person, and like how harmful that can be, and like how addicting it is, like how easily the Beast wants him to break his chains and just say forget about it, just kill Casca, go after Griffith, like throw everything away, doesn't matter. And I love that, because to me, and I feel like a lot of people, probably you as well, and a lot of Berserk fans, like, it's like it's relatable, because we all have that darkness within us a little bit. We all have that voice that's just like, just say fuck it, just do whatever you want, like who cares, throw it all away. And part of what I love about Berserk so much with its themes is that, like that's very, very easy to do, but it's a lot harder to struggle, endure, contend what the Skull Knight says, to push your way through it, to continue to fight against that. So it's just like a beautiful message all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And to circle around to the Skull Knight again, we were talking about chapter 362, where we saw a brief history of him. Yeah. I remember reading an interview where someone was asking him a question. They're like, why did you make the flashback sequence with the Golden Age arc so long? Because it is a flashback in a way.
Yeah, technically.
We start with the Black Swordsman arc, and then we go back and experience his childhood and his time with the Band of the Hawk and the Eclipse, and then we're kind of back in the thick of things with the Lost Children's chapters. And, he talked about the fact that he didn't want it to seem cheap or ineffectual. He wanted that flashback to mean something, because you had to understand where his rage was coming from. You had to understand why he had this need for vengeance, and why he was so angry at Griffith. If it was just kind of like this 1 or 2 chapter thing, it might have been like, well, we kind of understand it, but there's so many movies nowadays and other series that I feel like they kind of employ that same little dynamic, and it just never feels as authentic. And the way it relates to the Skull Knight is, we got that brief flashback, and it's like, was Mira planning at some point to maybe do a 1,000-year flashback of the Skull Knight and Void, and have it be maybe this 50, 60, 70 chapter thing where you really understood why the Skull Knight feels like he made this huge mistake, and what happened between him and Void and the Lady Priestess of Cherry Blossoms? Like, how did that whole situation come about? And even Slan as well, because she refers to him as a king in the Quithalth. She's like, hello, your majesty. And it's like, well, how does she know that he's a king? Was she talking to Void, or was she also around during that time as well? There's so many unanswered questions in that regard.
Yeah, it's crazy. Speaking of Skull Knight, can you show me that figure there real quick?
Oh, yeah,
I kept noticing him off to the corner.
Let's see if I can adjust the light. Yeah, so I got this recently from
sick.
Prime One Studios.
Yeah, that's badass.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can see that, but the lights, the little candles down here light up as well. And there's 4 interchangeable swords.
Okay.
The shield, it feels like it's made out of metal. It weighs 50 pounds, about 2.5 feet tall. It's
shit.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It weighs 50 pounds?
50 pounds, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the cape he's wearing,
you could work out with Skull Knight. You could
literally I sleep with him every night. He's my waifu. My wife doesn't like it, but
yeah, hey, you got to do what you got to do. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
I dig that. No, but yeah, what you're saying, I don't know how long it would be, but I would have assumed that there would have been a sequence where we get a lot more intimate details about Skull Knight and Void and that whole situation, because we got the puzzle pieces, but it's a little bit, when you try putting them together, there's still gaps that tend not to make sense. So I would hope that at some point, probably what I would imagine is when Void is reintroduced into the story, like not in the flashback, but when he actually comes, when we see the God Hand again, or when we see Void again, that's when I would have imagined it happening, somewhere like around there, where kind of like an all is revealed kind of moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's just really interesting. And you think about those time skips that we were talking about with Skellig Island and Skull Knight going there and everything. It makes me wonder if there's other areas where these time skips are permissible, where they're allowed, essentially. And was Slan also around during King Geyseric's time, and then was living in some far-off land where, it just felt like a few months for her, but decades and centuries went by?
Yeah, I mean, that could be possible. Like, literally anything is possible, really. I mean, but, that could definitely be a possibility, because if you look at, like, what a lot of, like Shirake says and what Flora says and stuff, is that, like, during Geyseric's reign, like 1,000 years ago, people, like humans and more like mythological creatures, were a lot more, like, intertwined. Like, they existed, like, they kind of amongst one another. So I would imagine it would be far more likely to fall into sort of that, like, pocket astral dimension, or whatever you want to call it, and have, time move differently. I mean, and then you have the whole question of, like, what was the previous God Hand that it showed in the Skull Knight flashback as well, like, because a lot of theories on them are like they don't look particularly human. So was that era of God Hand created from the more like mythological beings, and then moving forward it became more because of human darkness and human evil with this set? But I don't know. We may never know. That's the sad part. That's the worst part, is that we may never know.
Yeah, those last, 3-4 chapters were just such a tease, and it's like we wanted so many answers. It's like there were already so many questions going into those chapters, and then it's like Mira just kind of teases us with a dozen more, and it's like, can't we get something? He was, I think the biggest issue was the gaps in between chapters, how long it would take. But if you look at those chapters back to back to back, I mean, it's like banger after banger. Like, Casca comes back, Griffith disappears, Guts and Skull Knight go and, like, meet the creator of the armor, Skull Knight history, Moonlight Boy shows up. Like, this just, like, shit is happening. Like, it's ramping up. Like, if you read it straight through, you can feel like a roller coaster. Like, we're on the rise, but we never got to hit that fucking drop, And it's, what was it, chapter 363, where he had that little moment with Isidro messing with the witches, and then Puck was dressing up as Star Wars. It's like that part. Yeah. It's like, why were you wasting pages on that? Like, we need more, like, substantial information. You're giving us this? Like, come on, dude.
He just loves his Isidro antics, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. But going back to maybe like some of the beginnings of Berserk, how did you initially get started with the series? How did that all come about? How long have you been a Berserk fan?
So really, I've only been a Berserk fan since 2018. It was when I got into it. I'd always heard of it. Like, I knew what it was. I knew it was an anime. I knew it was a manga. I'd heard the title a bunch of times. I think I saw the trailers for the 97, back in the early 2000s on before a Kenshin VHS tape or something. So I was aware of its existence, but I didn't know anything about it. So I didn't know that it was about demons or vengeance or anything. I just knew it was a medieval swordsman thing.
No Donovan memes coming your way?
No, they all escaped me. I wish they would still all escape me, but yeah, no, I didn't know anything. So I first decided to watch it when the Golden Age arc trilogy movies came on Netflix. So that was my first exposure to it. So I watched the first movie, I liked it. Second one, I liked it even more. And then you got to the third one, and bro, I just did not. I didn't know the eclipse was coming because no Black Swordsman arc. There was no kind of tease or warning that I was going to get anything like that. I was just watching a medieval story. I mean, sure, Zod shows up at one point, so you're like, okay, there's demons here, but I remember specifically watching it and feeling horrible for Griffith, by the way. I was totally sympathizing with him. And the scene where he falls into the lake and he like tries to kill himself on that branch, and then he can't do it and he starts crying. I was sitting there like, this is the most depressing shit I've ever watched in my life. Like, where does the story go from here? Like, there's an hour left of this movie? Like, how do you make this better? Like, what? Like, there's got to be something that happens here, right? But then, no, it just got worse because then the eclipse starts. And I'm just sitting there watching this, like, completely, I mean, captivated. But, like, inside my mind, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it just blew my mind. And then when the movie ended and there's no real ending, it's just Guts, like, vowing vengeance, I was like, well, I literally can't let this end here. I have to know what happened. So, sorry about my cat in the background and the dude sawing outside. A lot of distractions I wasn't planning for. I apologize. Yeah, so I knew I had to get into the manga. I was like, I have to know what happens next. Like, I have to experience this. So, yeah, so then I got... I remember I ordered the first 3 volumes and read them and loved them, and then I just kind of kept going from there. It's like every paycheck from work, I would buy a volume, and I would treat it like a TV series. Like, every Sunday, I would read a new volume, kind of like a new episode, right? Okay. So I was like, I'd build the anticipation... I'd wait, I'd order a volume, and then the next Sunday I would read it again. Basically, that's how I read the entire series. I did like a weekly sort of like, I can't wait to watch my new Berserk episode, but it's reading the manga. And yeah, I fell in love with it. And then the reason I started talking about it on YouTube was simply because I just didn't have anybody else like in my actual real life that read it or was interested in it. Like, I got a buddy of mine to watch the movies on Netflix, but he's not like a manga reader, so he didn't go any further than that, you know what I mean? So I kind of just wanted to talk about it. So I already had like some existing YouTube channels, that I didn't have like a lot of subscribers or anything, but I was just like, I'm just going to start talking about this on YouTube. And then like slowly over the years, it just sort of like started to go from there. So that's kind of how it went for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
My story starts in 2009. Well, I guess 2007. I watched anime before that, like Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon,
of course,
Yu-Gi-Oh, but like that's anime, it's kind of anime but not really anime. I never really got into the hardcore stuff, but 2007, and I caught the first 3 episodes of Death Note and absolutely binged that within like 3 or 4 days, and it was just like, from there, it was like, what else is there? What's like Death Note? What's, what can I get into? And the disappointment from finding out that there weren't a lot of series like Death Note out there was kind of turned me off a little bit. But then in 2009, I got into it again with Berserk, and I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And I started off with the 1997 anime. Nice. Again, binge through that very quickly, and I just like you, once I got to episode 25, 26?
It was 25 in the 97.
Okay. It was that same, like, because I'll be a man and admit this, I kind of hated Griffith, and even though I felt bad for him, when he was getting tortured, there was a part of me like, he's kind of this pompous asshole, and he's kind of the popular kid at school, and I was just like, I kind of like to see him get his just comeuppance. So it was kind of like, but at the same time, it's like, this is awful. Like, what's gonna happen? How are they gonna save him? Is this his life from now on? Like, is he just gonna be this, for the lack of a better term, cripple who can't really do anything? And the eclipse happens, and it was just like a total 180. Like, we saw Zod in episode 5 or 6, but it was like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah. And the ending for the anime was even worse than the movies, because it was like, your Guts is screaming, and then just kind of fades away, and then it goes back to him and Godo, and he's like, you going out? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, that's it? Like, we get nothing else beyond that? So then I decided, I'm like, is there a sequel to this? And I saw there was no sequel at the time, so I kind of fell out of it again. I still loved it. I rewatched it, but then it wasn't until 2016 when they revived the anime that I was okay, I can get into it again. Like, this is going to be awesome. And as you know, it wasn't so awesome. The animation was terrible. they skipped a lot of material, and it was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, why don't I go to the source? Why don't I actually read the manga this time around? So 2016, I read up till chapter 200, around there. And for some reason I stopped. I think it was because of the introduction of magic, kind of like, you know, my buddy. Like, at the time, I'll admit it,
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it. Like, I was just kind of like, why are they doing this? Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
And it took for me to be a little more mature, a little more understanding, have a little more knowledge in my head, and now I kind of see some of those mythological elements as important to the story, some of those psychological elements as important to the story. And yeah, I think it was 2020 I picked it up again. I reread up till 200 and then beyond, and it was just like, man, I've been missing out on this. Like, I've had years, decades, and I just kind of left it kind of hanging out there in no man's land. But now it's like I'm totally immersed in it. I try to read Kentaro Miura's interviews whenever I can. I've reread the manga several times, anime too, and it's fantastic.
When did you decide to make YouTube videos on it?
I started my YouTube channel in 2019, and I made a couple of Attack on Titan videos.
Okay.
Which I was mostly just shitting on the series at that point.
I feel you're not alone.
Yeah, I really liked the first season of Attack on Titan. I thought that was a great season. I thought it really got you into the mystery behind it and sort of the horrifying elements. And you kind of could see that it was like Berserk in a way because it was very horrifying and scary. But after that, it kind of got a little weird for me. But around that time when I was making those Attack on Titan videos, I also made a Berserk video called Nietzsche's Influence on Berserk. And I talked about the whole fact that I was talking about one of Nietzsche's stories in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where he talks about the transformation phases from the camel to the lion to the child, and I kind of related that to Griffith. And then I kind of fell off the Berserk bandwagon in terms of like making videos. But then when chapter, I believe it was 362 came out, which was a very pivotal chapter, I got back into it again. And I was like, hey, I could start making review videos off of this and start getting into some of those elements, like the Nietzschean concepts and the Jungian concepts and some of the mythological concepts, and maybe try to attack it from that way. Because I saw one other YouTuber, and his name is it's escaping me at the moment, but he made like a Nietzschean / Jungian video. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I was like, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could start to get into these different aspects that not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need more Berserk tubers out there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I don't know, do you follow Spired's channel at all?
Spired.
He posts like one video a year, but he makes the best, content, I swear.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I just can't remember him.
He did, I think his biggest video is, he did a analysis on the Cracks in the Blade chapter and the Bubbles of Futility chapter, and he did a review of the Grunbeld novel, which was hilarious because which I never read, and I don't plan to, but he just like points out everything that's horrible about it, and it's really, really entertaining. That's
right. So I actually made a video countering that, not countering his video, but saying that everyone is wrong about the Flame Dragon Knight novel.
I've never read it. I'll be honest, I never read it.
And I was like, hey, just give it a chance, guys. It's actually got some interesting concepts. Now, if I remember correctly, the guy who wrote it, I believe he also worked on the 2016 Berserk anime. I think he was the scriptwriter. It wasn't like he was an animator.
Yeah.
And then I think he worked on Psycho-Pass as well.
Okay. So
maybe not the greatest credentials in the world, although Psycho-Pass I know has a pretty strong fan base. But I think just give it a chance. It's only like, if I remember correctly, 150 pages. Okay. And it kind of gives the backstory to Grunbeld and kind of talks about, the friends and the life story that he went through prior to his eclipse. And I actually think it's actually pretty interesting. I think if Mira had the time, if he wasn't spending so much time putting every last detail into his manga panels, I think that could have been something that made it into the original manga. In fact, I would have loved to see like the backstory for many of these apostles, like Roxas and Locus, and
give me one on Zod. That's what I want.
Yeah, well,
I thought it would be cool if they did a series of like one shots and put it in a volume. So like take like one chapter for each apostle and maybe do like a narrative like explanation of things that are happening. Maybe not a whole lot of like actual spoken dialogue, but treat it like a storytelling kind of thing. Like I don't know how to describe it, but kind of like if you ever read like Hunter x Hunter, like how they did the Chimera Ants battle, like it's pretty much just like a lot of narration that is happening. But do like one shot. So do like a chapter for Zod, chapter for Irvine, a chapter for, you can even do like the God Hand if you want, and do like a volume of like one shots for all these characters. I thought would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean that kind of speaks to what I was talking about earlier though with like the Golden Age arc flashback. Like I don't know if that would do those characters justice. Like I think
if it would be enough.
Mira is such a perfectionist that I don't think he would like it that way. I think he would want those stories to be expanded and immersive, and maybe if he had the time, maybe if he didn't pass away so soon, maybe that's what he was thinking in the future. I don't know, but like
maybe
I almost think like the way he thinks, he wouldn't want it to be a one shot. I think he would want to expand upon the universe in depth and make it where like you actually knew these characters and like you could commiserate with them and empathize with them, because that's kind of what the idea of the whole Griffith did nothing wrong video was. Yeah, he's done bad things. Like the video title was a little baity in a way, but it was to help the audience sort of realize that, hey, remember, prior to him being Femto, he was probably the most abused character in that series. I mean, I understand Casca almost got raped, Guts did get raped, but no one got tortured for a year. Got his tongue cut off, skin peeled back. I mean, maybe he got, I don't know. I mean, like, we can only imagine what happened in that year's time, and, he made basically one decision that sort of defines him, and should we make that a defining mark for him? Like I kind of talked about in that video, like Alexander the Great, we sort of think of him as this great military leader, but there was kind of a lot of bad that went along with that too. And if that bad stuff happened to you, yeah, you would see him as this horrible person. But from the outside, if you take a step back from a historical angle, maybe the good outweighs the bad. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think one of the most impressive things about Kentaro Miura's writing and stuff is that he is very nuanced with this. Where, yes, there is evil and darkness, but it puts Griffith in a position to where it's like, what would you do in that situation? If you put anybody in that situation, like, could you possibly imagine having everything you ever worked for ripped away from you, being tortured for a year, like you said, knowing that you're going to have to spend the rest of your life as like a broken husk of your former self. You can't even lift your own arms. And then you have angels, let's say, come down and say, hey, actually, you can still have everything that you want. It's like, it's all right there. You can keep going. All you have to do, sacrifice everybody you care about. It's like, well, it's I can't say what I would do. I've never been tortured for a year. I don't know what I would think during that moment, but yeah, and that's the great thing about it, is that you can understand it. And I think that villains that you can understand, or let's say antagonists that you can understand, are the best kind, because you can really kind of put yourself into that perspective and think like, well, shit, like, what would you do in that situation? And you're right, like, but Griffith, you're right. Like a conqueror, if you were comparing him to like Alexander the Great or something, or like I don't even know who else, maybe like a Genghis Khan or something, like somebody that rose up and like conquered a lot. Yeah, like they had to, they've done a lot of horrible things in order to achieve this great status. We look at them in history, like you said, as these great warriors and conquerors, which yes, they were, but they also like did a lot of shitty things along the way. But you kind of, as a leader like that, as a conqueror, right, you have to, because you have to be able to make those quick strong, like stern decisions. You're not allowed to sit there and just think, well, maybe if I did this, if I did that. So yeah, I think that's an absolutely good comparison to bring to Griffith.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally lost my idea now.
Sorry, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah. Anyway, though, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about as well is maybe Berserk has kind of gone through a lot of iterations, and it's been going on for the last 30 years. When you look back at Berserk, is there like an arc that you sort of look back at with fondness and like that was like when Kentaro Miura was at his peak? Like, I know a lot of people say the Golden Age arc, and rightfully so, but like maybe is there or maybe even just a moment that you look back at fondly and just like, that was Miura just putting his heart and passion in the page. And when I think of Berserk, that's sort of like emblematic of everything that he was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how sappy I want to get here, but I remember when I first read the Wounds chapters from the Golden Age arc, because that's not in any anime version. Probably because Guts and Casca are naked and boning the entire time, which was also nice to see. But the thing that like really I legitimately like almost cried reading those chapters. Like just the fact that Guts had this horrible traumatic experience when he was a child, and he was never able to really truly like release, or he was always guarded and he didn't want to be touched, and he had this sort of like traumatic flashback, and literally like breaks down and cries in front of Casca, and just the moment of like the whole like symbolism of wounds. Like we have these wounds, we have these scars, but that's like what makes us who we are. We wouldn't be where we are right now if we hadn't had these scars that led us to this. And the fact that Casca can just like wrap her arms around him, fully embrace him, accept him for like all his flaws, all the like the horrible traumatic things that he did, the it just perhaps even like ruining that moment for her, because of what happened. It's like, I'm sorry, and like truly accepting him for it. And the line that's like, I want a scar I can say you gave me, meaning like I want you to make an impact on my life. I want you to truly to be another wound of mine. And it's just like I read that chapter and I was like, I'd never seen anything like that in a manga, much less like most any other stories, where it could really like, no pun intended again, sorry, be stripped down and be that like authentic, about two people coming together and embracing each other for all their flaws, all their past history, anything moving forward. And it like shattered me. Like I was emotional reading it. Like I didn't actually cry, but like I was right there. You know what I mean? I'd never
manly tears.
Exactly. One single tear, like the going down a cheek. But like I'd never read anything like that before, and it still is my favorite Berserk chapter. And I know that's like, I don't know, like you have a whole story with like trolls and giant sword fights and demons and stuff, and like my favorite chapter is when two characters are boning. But like it was just such a emotional chapter for me, so I'm always going to remember the first time I read it.
Yeah, that's definitely in my top 5 as well. I love that moment as well. And to kind of piggyback off of your point, how Guts is sort of leaning on her, but that moment where she's hugging him and they're both naked and they're both vulnerable and stripping away all their protection, and the way she kind of leans into him too and wants to be embraced and supported by him, and he wants to be supported by her, is just absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite moments too is during the Fantasia arc when Farnese and Shirka are inside Casca's dreams, and you see Guts as this manifestation of this dog missing its leg. And I love those chapters because seeing this desperate hound who is trying as best as he can in this world that is full of darkness and phallic objects and just egregious moments, and he's just so desperate to protect her no matter what it takes, even though she's a shattered doll, even though it looks like there's no hope for her. He's trying as best as he can to push through and make sure that she becomes whole again. It's so emblematic of his journey, and how at times it seems futile. It seems like no progress is being made. He keeps slaying, he keeps killing, but he's not climbing any stairs, as it were. It just seems like he's just pushing forward, and this darkness is just swirling around him, and he's disoriented, and nothing can happen but pure evil. And then at the end of it, you finally see them put the heart inside. The dog is howling, and all of a sudden Casca opens her eyes again, and it's like, holy crap, like, she's back. Like, how many chapters has she been gone? Like 200 plus chapters, and that's Casca again. And like, the face on Farnese and Shirka when they see the real Casca for the first time is just like, that was one of those moments where tears were coming down my face as well. It was just like, holy crap, like, she's not a potato anymore. Like, it's actually Casca.
After 20 years. It's
and
crazy.
That moment when she's walking outside of, the corridor of dreams, and she's gonna meet Guts, like, I was like, oh my god, is she like gonna hug him? Are they gonna embrace each other? And then like Mira crushes your heart once more, and it's like, oh, that's why I love it though. You never know what to expect,
Mm-hmm. That moment is like, and then the very next chapter is a Griffith chapter. You're like, no. No, I feel you on that one, man. That was definitely that was a powerful. I love that whole sequence. The whole dreamscape sequence is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of symbolism in there as well, because Donen talks about the fact that, like, I'm paraphrasing here, but that dreams are very similar to the astral realm, and it just makes me think, like, now that we have this overlapping of the physical realm and the astral realm, does that mean like dreams are becoming one with reality? And man,
I mean, it's always been interesting to me because they say like when you're asleep you're kind of like more in tune to the spiritual, I suppose. And I like that also. And then during the dream sequence there was the brief return of Flora. That helped out a little bit, so you kind of wonder how much of that is that because like the dream world and the astral world are kind of the same thing? Like, is she actually there? So I definitely think that's definitely a factor as well.
Yeah, it's sort of weird too, because Gedfring was talking about the fact that Shirka can learn how to summon daemons, like heroes and sorcerers from the past. And it just sort of makes you wonder, like, okay, we're definitely probably going to see Flora again because she summoned her in the dream. Who else are we going to see, from the past? It sort of makes you wonder. And, this was a topic of discussion I had with one of my friends. But when people die, and if they've lived sort of a, let's say, evil life, I sort of look to Vargas for an example. Even though he was tortured and his family was eaten in front of him by the Count, he still harbored this resentment, and he still became part of that mass of swirling spirits that pulled the Count into the astral realm. I just sort of wonder, like, if heroes and sorcerers can become daemons, like the inverse of like of an apostle, what happens to, like, say, normal people? Do they become like spiritual beings roaming the earth? Do they become elves? Because we see all these elves sort of roaming the earth. I mean, were they humans? Because they have these human-like characteristics. I mean, Puck, besides like the magical powers in the ears, he looks like a human.
Yeah, it's strange because, again, like, it's a lot open to interpretation. I feel like, because a lot of people say, because obviously the Abyss is sort of like Berserk's version of hell. It's even like said that in the manga, basically, is what it is. But then it calls into question, is there also a heaven? What is that all about? And I think a lot of it might be your state, I don't want to say state of mind, but maybe your state of being as you die. Because a lot of the like dark spirits, the restless souls, the things that haunt Guts, and especially everything that was at the Conviction Tower, where everybody died in torture and famine, and so we're all dying in like rage, anguish, misery, all these dark emotions that kind of like keep us as these dark, restless spirits that kind of still exist. So if somebody, say Flora, was able to die positively on her own terms at peace, does that play a factor as well after death? Perhaps that's a little bit more of a indicative of like where you end up or what you can do after you die. Maybe it's like where your spirit is at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. That seems in line with what Mira was, sort of conveying there. Yeah, and it sort of makes you wonder about like Guts' spirit as well. I mean, he's done a lot of things that are sort of morally questionable, but he's got a good heart. I mean, we sort of all understand that he's doing it for the right purposes, even though things in the Conviction arc and the Black Swordsman arc got a little bit dicey there. He could have definitely have saved Vargas, but he kind of just let him die and kind of just laughed it off like, well, that's his fault. Like, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
And
Guts represents it better than anybody else, and I think that's a lot of what Miura was going for in his story as well, because you have a guy who, by all accounts, by all means, could and probably would have been better off if he just, well, not better off, but like would have been, it would have been perfectly understandable, normal, natural if he just let his darkness consume him. He, out of anybody, is in sort of a perfect place where you've had all these horrible, traumatic things happen, but yet he does continue to move forward past it. Even if he dips down to his darkest levels, Black Swordsman arc era where he just is pushing everybody away, doesn't care about anyone, anything, he rises above, and it kind of shows like as deep as you sink, if you're willing to continue moving forward, you can rise out of that. Like, it's possible. And I think just Guts exemplifies that more than any character in Berserk, and perhaps like most any other character in fiction, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Mira does a great job of, conveying complex emotions within his characters, Guts, Griffith, Casca. And, it's literally like anything else, because most mangas are sort of predicated on plot points. What can I do to sort of twist the viewer's, perception of reality? What can I do to sort of shock and awe them? And Guts, I mean, Berserk has a lot of those moments where it's like, the eclipse, for example, like no one saw that coming. I mean, we knew that. Well, I mean, I guess if you read the Black Swordsman arc, you saw it coming.
Yeah,
but like,
I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, but like, you never knew how horrible it was gonna be. I mean, we saw Griffith with the Bayonet, and there was sort of this ominous tone. But up until that point, Griffith was sort of cast as this hero archetype, as someone who was, above everyone else, and someone who could do anything if he put his mind to it, which he did. And it's just like, then Mira said, you know what, now I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to put him down to the deepest hell, and I'm going to show you what a normal human being is willing to do to achieve that sort of greatness. Because I'm sure we've all been put in those situations in our life, not as desperate as what Griffith was put in, but like where, hey, you find, I don't know, $20 on the floor of a store, and you're like, well, I could just pocket this, or I could give it to the staff of the store and be like, hey, I found this. If someone comes, please give it to them. We all are kind of given those moments throughout our lives, and I think what Mira is trying to convey is that no matter what happens, if you have the right mindset, if you're a person who wants to sort of better yourself and push through those circumstances and try to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, life will sort of, or causality as it were, is going to sort of help you out in that regard. Whereas if you give in to some of those evil instincts, maybe you'll attain power, but at a cost.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about choice. You still have choice at the end. You have free will, so to speak, at the end of the day, right? So that's what I like about it too, because all the apostle thing, becoming an apostle, becoming a god hand, whatever it is, it's still your choice. It may be fate that led to this happening, causality, this happened, this happened, this happened, all these horrible events led to this moment. But when that moment's there, it's still your choice. And just like the Count refused to he wouldn't give up his daughter to revive himself. And that just goes to show, like, you still have that choice. So I think that that's something that's so cool about it too, because it's not fate as in like it's 100% going to be this. It's like 99.999999%, but there still is that 0.0 whatever percent that somebody can say no, and not do it and not give in. And so I like that aspect about it.
That's also an interesting question as well, because after the Count refused the second time, after he didn't want to sacrifice his daughter, he was pulled into the swirling mass. Now, I always kind of figured because he gave in the first time, he kind of co-signed his own sort of demonhood and basically accepted the fact that he was evil. But what if that first time with his wife, he said no? Mm-hmm. Does he still go into the demon mass, or what example, what happens if Griffith says no? Do they just like, okay, we'll find someone else to be a God Hand member? Like,
right.
They waited 216 years. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure they would be like, or is that just all part of causality? They know he's going to say yes, and free will's not a choice.
Yeah, I think it is a choice, but I think, like I said, it's that like 99.9999% that he's going to say yes. Like, things have been designed in a specific way to put you in a situation where it's like the quote from the beginning of the anime, where it's like, it's as if mankind has no control even over his own free will. So that's what I feel like it is. It's as if you have no control over your own free will, because run that scenario a million times, 99,999 times, you're gonna say yes. So that's how I view it. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's how I've always kind of understood it in my head.
Yeah, and well, another interesting concept too is that Guts has a Baelitz in his possession. So I mean, maybe Mira was sort of setting it up where, now we don't know if that's specifically his Baelitz and he'll come to a point in his life where he'll have to make a choice, or if that's, because he got it from Vargas, I believe. He's just been kind of holding on to it ever since. Yeah. So, I mean, I would imagine, given Guts' character, he's just going to tell the God Hand to F off. But what's the result of that? Like, do they just say, okay, now you're ours? Or is there some sort of like, okay.
Do you want to know my theory? Some people call me crazy, but so my theory is that it's actually a little bit of a red herring, and it won't be used for a traditional sacrifice, but it will be used in the creation of the next Baelitz sword. But the Baelitz sword, unlike Skull Knight's, will be Guts' Dragon Slayer, and it will be part of the formation. That's my like crazy like tinfoil hat fan theory. But I have my reasoning behind. I have no like story reason. This is just headcanon. But my story reason is that
the best kind of canon.
Yeah, because Guts has been carrying it with him so long. You know how like Skull Knight, he like swallows all the Baelitz. I don't know what it does inside of his stomach, but what I imagine is happening is that with his intention of what he's trying to do, he sort of influences the Baelitz, like kind of repurposes them, and like that's how he like attaches them to the sword. So I'm assuming, like, if that Baelitz was around Guts all this time, it would sort of be attached to his intentions. So perhaps it would make the next Baelitz sword even stronger if it was added to it. Now, that's all headcanon. I have nothing to back that up. I got nothing, no evidence whatsoever. But that's just my theory.
Yeah, no, that's actually interesting. I never considered that before. I never considered that maybe he would use that to his own advantage. I almost wonder if, like, maybe he could talk to Hanar or something and, maybe, like, modify the Berserker armor in a way where that Baelitz... I don't know. No. I was thinking maybe, like, the Baelitz could be infused into the Berserker armor and then, like...
just enhance him to cut through dimensions? Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, with the Baelitz sword, that's the only thing that I know of that can destroy the God Hand. I mean, it can rip through the astral realm. So, I mean, you would think Guts would need something that could do that as well, but the fact that he's killed so many apostles with his Dragon Slayer...
Right.
Puck made, like, some sort of reference where, like... Or Shirka made the reference where, like, he's got some sort of, like, magical, like, spirit infused within the sword now?
Yeah, it's, like, able to cut on a physical and astral level. So that's how he was able to harm Kanishka, right? So
Right.
imagine that. It's already that strong, but then you turn the Dragon Slayer into a Baelite sword. I'm just saying. Like, just imagine the potential behind that. And it might be able to do what Skull Knight's sword couldn't. Because maybe Skull Knight's sword wasn't, it's the Dragon Slayer is something special with Guts using it. So
Right.
perhaps the reason why Skull Knight's sword was ineffective is because it's just not enough. It's just not enough. You need, like, what Guts has. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he didn't hit Femto. I mean, he missed. So,
Well, that's
like,
the thing. Like, I feel like Femto, like, stopped it. He, like, caught it in midair.
well, didn't he bend the sword and he caught it with his hand?
I think he bent he cut the sword swipe, like the cut in dimension, and he somehow grabbed onto the cut in dimension and was like, "Nope, I'm going to use this instead." And then
it was
sliced
almost
open
like
Ganishka.
Yeah, it was almost like he turned the sword into like a ribbon or something, and it was kind of like going in all sorts of directions, and it was like in front of his face, and he was holding it. And that's the thing too, like, even if you have this Baelite sword that can cut through the astral realm, Void, we saw in the Eclipse, had this interdimensional power where he could like make the sword go through a different dimension and attack the Skull Knight in the end. So it's like, is that still a possibility? Like, or can the Baelite sword cut through those dimensions? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. That's again, like, one of the best things about it is that there's still so much mystery to it. We don't know what the God Hand can actually do. Like, if the God Hand fights, does the God Hand fight, or do they just like stand there and create pocket dimension? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, they're on such a high level. Like, could you even fight a God Hand? You know what I mean? But say that they do, like, that's the kind of powers that they have. We've seen Void do that, like you said. We've seen Femto, like, just basically throw Guts with his mind, and slam, naked. So there's just like
erecting tents.
Yeah. So who knows what they can do, man? But that's just what makes it so exciting. But then also, like, with Miura's passing, that's what makes it so tragic, is because it's like, I want to see it, man. I want to see it through to the end. I don't know.
Yeah, I always kind of had this headcanon that, now I know Chapter 83 wasn't officially canonized, but I still kind of consider it canon in my head.
Yeah,
with
I do
the idea
too.
With the idea of evil. And I always thought, well, the reason that the idea of evil came about was the need for reason. Why does my life suck? Why am I being tortured? Why this? Why that? It always seems to be honing in on people's vices and weaknesses. I almost wonder if, like, attacking, like, the God Hand, you would have to go to the idea of evil and change the thoughts and attitudes of the populace. Like, you would have to almost get rid of those bad thoughts and feelings and sort of give them a new reason, rather than hating on your neighbor or hating on this person or that person. But I don't know if that would translate well into, like, an epic battle.
Yeah. Oh, dude, trust me. I've thought about this too, and I try to think, like, can it even ever be stopped, or can it just be postponed? Like, because if it takes like 5 God Hand to get to a point where they can enact this, that's like 1,000 some years. Like, is that really the only thing to do? Because, like, evil obviously exists in the hearts and minds of everybody. Everybody has the potential for it, and like you said, like, need a reason to justify why horrible things happen. So then I think about all these crazy ideas, because I'm like, maybe the point of the idea of evil is to either, like, perpetuate its own existence, so therefore that's why it, like, cycles every 1,000 years, gives people hope, then tears it away, gives them hope, tears it away, that sort of thing, so that people continue to believe in it. Or if it's trying to, like, give people the salvation that they need, which, so it would have to, like, eradicate itself, but to do that you'd have to, like, eradicate all of humanity. So then is its purpose to just wipe out humanity in itself, thus, like, destroying itself? There's no more idea of evil, because it's, it's not every living creature, it's humans that come up with the concept of evil. Or does it want to continue existing? So let's just yeah, like I said, give them hope and then rip it away. I don't know. But I've thought about these things over and over, and I'm like, I don't know what direction he wanted to go in. I'm like, it could be this, it could be this. It's crazy. It makes your brain hurt after a while.
Yeah, and talking about like the God Hand and the old God Hand, it seems like a lot of the members are based on like, mythological gods of, millennia ago. So like, you look at like one of the God Hand members from Skull Knight's time kind of looked like a fertility idol. And they were kind of like these simplistic creatures. One kind of looked like Poseidon. And then they sort of evolved based on human intellect and emotion. Then we're getting a God Hand member of lust, and a God Hand member of artful deception, and a God Hand member of what?
Oh, like plague, disease, like Conrad.
Plague, disease.
Like
yeah, I was blanking there for a moment.
Yeah,
and then you get the God Hand member of the king, the need for power and control. Mm-hmm. And I also kind of had this headcanon in my head, like, how would they evolve for current times? I kind of pictured like Karl Marx being like the next God Hand member.
Oh, like modern times, like,
and like Hitler and Napoleon.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I was like, because it was kind of like you said, to get rid of the idea of evil, you would almost have to get rid of humanity altogether. It's almost part of being human is the need to be evil. You can't have good without evil, and vice versa. It's just kind of part of the human condition. So how does Guts sort of battle that? How maybe he changes the idea of evil into something else where it's still there, but it's evolved and it's not as ruthless and evil as it is now. Maybe it's a different kind of evil.
Yeah, I mean, it could be symbolic of Guts' whole journey. How, he has to, like, he's got to live with this darkness, but he can't let it consume him. So he's got to incorporate it somehow without dragging him down, basically. So, that makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I see we've been talking for 1 hour and 7 minutes. Do you want to keep going? You got any more questions, or do you want to wrap it up here?
Yeah, we could wrap it up. I probably need to get food at some point here.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Man. Well, yeah, it was nice talking to you. Very fun discussions.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and I'll have you on my channel as well in the future if you're down.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can do that.
Yeah,
we can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe next time we'll take fan questions and maybe incorporate some other, or maybe have like a more planned format so that we can kind of keep things organized. But yeah, this was a great time.
Yeah, that'd be kick-ass, dude. I'm down.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll talk to you later then.
All right, take it easy, man.
Yeah, you too.
Yep.